Hello, welcome along to our the first of our beginners crochet tutorials. So first of all, we're going to start with looking at the yarn and the hook. So this is our 4mm hook. It's got a nice soft grip with a metal shaft. The way you hold it, you can hold it any way that's comfortable for you. Some people hold it like that, like a knife. That's the way I hold it. Some people hold it like that, like a pen, whichever's most comfortable for you. This yarn is double knitting. It means it's made up of 8 strands. So we're going to start with the basic foundation stitch for any crochet garment, usually, unless you're working in the round. It's called the chain stitch. We start with making a slip knot. To make a slip knot, you make a circle with your yarn so it crosses over like that. Hold that with your thumb. Then you want this long bit to come up through that circle you've made. So you pull it up like that, making a loop, and then pull that knot to tighten it. And then the reason it's called a slip knot is it moves. It tightens and loosens. So we start with the slip knot. We want it tight enough on our hook so that it doesn't move around when you shake it, but that it will still slide up and down. So that's the basis. Now, the way you hold everything together it can be quite awkward at first, but you will soon find your way. So we've got this, we'll call this our working yarn, call this the tail, and that is the loop on our hook. So to start with, I'm just going to tuck this tail out of the way. I'm just going to catch it in that finger while I make my first chain. So for a chain, we do a yarn over. Now, yarn over in crochet is your yarn usually lies at the front and you go from the back to the front, wrapping it around. What you want is for this bit you wrapped around to go under that little the little hook. We're having the flat bit of the hook facing us. So what we want to do now is draw this yarn through that loop on the hook. So in order to do that, I'm going to switch this tail to my other hand, trying to keep it all facing forward. That just gives it a bit of tension. You'll notice that the working yarn's wrapped just slightly around my finger, and I've pushed my finger forward to keep that tight under that the hook. So the hook is facing us. We're going to draw the whole thing backwards, catching that yarn. When that yarn turns under the hook face, we're going to turn it so that the hook face is pointing down, and we're going to pull it through that loop that was on our hook. So once again, we've got one loop on our hook. You can see the little V shape that's formed. That's your chain stitch. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to take my yarn round the back of my hook and over the front and under the hook bit. Hold on to the bottom of my work there with my thumb and forefinger. Draw back the hook and turn it and then pull it through. Now I am holding this with my finger while I do my yarn over. That just stops it wobbling about. So yarn over, back to front. Hold your work with your thumb and forefinger. Gradually draw your hook back until that working yarn is underneath the point. Turn the hook and pull through. Yarn round front to back. Hold the work, pull back, and you keep doing that. And we're going to carry on doing that chain stitch until we have 31 chain. So now we've got our 31 chain. The way you count them, you don't count that's the loop that's been on our hook. If you can you can see on the work there's these little V's that each one of them is a stitch, so you count those little V's when you want to count your chain, see how many you've got. So we've done 31. The reason we've done an odd number is that when you turn and work back along the chain in crochet or any row you've made, you always allow a turning chain. That puts the work on the right side, so it's on the back of your work where you want it. It'll become more obvious when you've done a row of stitches. So the last chain we did, the 31st chain we did, is actually our turning chain. We don't work trick now that will help you as you go. We're going to put a stitch marker in there, our working loop, and we're going to put one all the way back here at the beginning of our chain. Now this will just help you identify your stitches. You won't need it forever, but it will help you to start. So put the next stitch I'm going to show you is the double crochet. In UK terms it's called a double crochet. In US terms it's called a single crochet. So we are ignoring the first stitch, the first V, and we're going to take our hook under the second chain from the hook, which is this one. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it under that top loop, so it's going through from front to back. Then we're going to do our yarn over, remembering coming from the back to the front, and the same movement. You pull your hook backwards, catching the yarn as you go, and just pull it up so you've got 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over again, and same thing, hold the work between your thumb and forefinger, pull the hook backwards, turning it as you go, and you're going to pull it through both those loops that are on your hook. And that is your double crochet stitch. So we want to move on to our next chain. If you give it a slight tug upwards, you can see that that stitch opens up. That's the one we worked in last time. So we're going in the next V along. We're going to go under that top leg of the V. We're going to wrap the yarn round, yarn over, and pull it backwards, catching it as we go, keeping that loop on the hook. Yarn over again and pull through both. Okay, so our next stitch along is there, through front to back, yarn over, pull back until we pull a loop up, yarn over and through both. So we're going to carry on along this chain, putting 1 stitch in each chain, and at the end of the row we will have 30 double crochet. Okay, we've reached the end of our chain and we've done a double crochet in each one. At this point I would recommend you count. In fact, as you're learning, I would recommend you count on every row. And the way you count the stitches with double crochet, if you turn it on its, so the chain bits at the bottom, you can see the V stitch, little V's that are formed by your stitches. So there's your first one, and you just count all the little V's to the end. Now, with regards to our stitch marker, the one that we put in to the working loop has now worked itself into the first stitch, so that's in the right place. So we're going to do the same with the one at the other end. What happens is this helps identify where your turning chain is when you come to work back along the row, because sometimes it's really difficult to see which is the stitch and which is the turning chain. So we don't really want to work in the turning chain. Okay, so I talked about a turning chain. At the end of there, we just did an extra chain. You know, our 31st chain was our turning chain. This time, we're going to actually do a chain. So you can see that's our last stitch, the working loop there. So we're just going to yarn round front to back and just pull it through to create a chain. So now, this stitch marker is in our turning chain, so we know we don't do a stitch in that. And then we turn the work through 180 degrees. So we're now looking at the back of it. Right, so the important thing about placing our stitches when we're working back along double crochet is there's 2 things. We want to get the hook between these little bumps. So there's our first one and there's our second one. We want it to go in there. But if you turn it on its end and where you can see the V that you counted, it needs to go under both legs of that V. So I'm going to take my hook, I'm going to put it between the 2 bumps, front to back. Just turn it on its end and see that it is going under both of those, which it is, so that's good. Then we're going to do our yarn over, pull through, so we've got our 2 loops, yarn over and through 2. Okay, so the next gap between the bumps is there. I'm going to go under it, checking I've gone under both of those V's, pull up my loop and create the stitch. And we carry on like that to the end. You will notice, as I'm working, that I'm not doing a specific yarn over there. That's simply because the yarn's at your back of work, it is quite easy to just put your hook under it, but it is technically a yarn over. You do a more obvious yarn over there. Okay, so we carry on with our double crochet all the way to the end of the row. So here we are, nearly at the end of the row. So what we've got is I've got 2 stitches left, 2 V's there. This is my stitch marker, that's in my turning chain, we ignore that. So one more there. Now this is where you may go wrong. It's hard to identify this last stitch, but it is there. If you turn it over, you can see it. So it's very easy to miss a stitch at the beginning and the end of a row, which is how you end up losing stitches. So that's our last stitch. So that's my 30 stitches. I'm going to move this stitch marker again up into my working loop so that it becomes inside my turning chain. And then I'm going to work exactly the same. I'm going to make my turning chain. I'm going to turn the work. I'm going to find my first gap. They become more obvious the more stitches you do. There it is. Through front to back, going under both legs, up, well, and through the 2. Next stitch is there. And that is it. You just carry on repeating that row, that pattern row, until your fabric is the size you want it to be. And that's double crochet.